全てのユミルの民に告ぐ。
今エレンの声が。
俺の名はエレン・イエーガー。始祖の巨人の力を介し、全てのユミルの民へ話しかけている。パラディ島にある全ての壁の硬質化が解かれ、その中に埋められていた全ての巨人は歩み始めた。俺の目的は、俺が生まれ育ったパラディ島の人々を守ることにある。しかし世界はパラディ島の人々が死滅することを望み、この島のみならず全てのユミルの民が殺され尽くすまで止まらないだろう。俺はその望みを拒む。壁の巨人はこの島の外にある全ての地表を踏み鳴らす。そこにある命をこの世から駆逐するまで。
Hey guys, Morpheus Christus here. As a long-time observer and recent participant in the anti-dog movement on YouTube, I wanted to take a moment to share my thoughts and mild criticisms regarding the anti-dog movement. As many of you may be aware by now, the primary focus of my channel is to promote revolutionary socialism. However, it is unequivocal that dogs and dog culture are in themselves byproducts of capitalism, as explained in my previous video Dog Culture and Capitalism. So while I applaud the crusaders and dissidents in condemning society's abominable fixation on dogs, my main concern is the lack of solution-oriented content from the anti-dog space. The reason I feel this is important is because dogs themselves are merely a symptom of a much larger existential threat, and that is international capitalism. Even if all the dogs in the world were to vanish overnight, society, particularly the United States, would remain in an immoral and dejected state, and people would simply redirect their attention towards other vices, such as cigarettes, gambling, junk food, alcohol, and hard drugs. Granted, dogs may be the most abhorrent of America's social problems. They are not the only threat we have been tasked to grapple with. Banning dogs alone wouldn't resolve America's loneliness epidemic, nor would it put an end to the myriad of mass shootings plaguing the country. And let's not forget the many instances of domestic violence and child abuse. Would it really make much of a difference if a dog is present in the house when a man beats his wife? The reason I'm drawing attention to these obstacles is not to play the whataboutism card, but to substantiate my case for the need of socialism. Most, if not all of the vices and maladies afflicting society are the result of capitalism, a materialist system which teaches us that our worth is defined by our income bracket. Capitalism isn't just an economic system, but simultaneously, an agent of societal disintegration through worker alienation. Karl Marx believed that capitalism inherently leads to alienation because of the way it structures social and economic relationships. In his view, capitalism is based on the exploitation of labor, which separates workers from their humanity and from the products of their work. Marx identified 4 key types of alienation that workers experience under capitalism. 1. Alienation from the product of labor. Under capitalism, workers do not own the products they create. Instead, these products belong to the capitalist, or bourgeoisie, which are the employers or owners of the means of production. As a result, workers become estranged from the outcomes of their labor, which are turned into commodities to be sold for profit. Workers have no control over how their products are used or valued. 2. Alienation from the process of labor. In a capitalist system, workers have little to no autonomy over the work process. They are often required to perform repetitive, monotonous tasks dictated by their employers, with no room for creativity or personal expression. This lack of control over the act of working itself leads to a sense of disconnection and frustration. 3. Alienation from other people. Capitalism fosters competition rather than cooperation among workers. Workers are pitted against one another in the labor market, and the hierarchical relationship between employers and employees creates further divisions. This alienates workers from their fellow human beings, as relationships are reduced to economic transactions. 4. Alienation from one's own humanity or self-alienation. Under capitalism, work becomes a means of survival rather than a fulfilling or meaningful activity. Marx believed that humans are inherently creative beings, and meaningful labor is an essential part of human nature. However, in a capitalist system, workers are treated as mere tools for production, which strips them of their sense of purpose and humanity. Marx argued that alienation is a result of the capitalist mode of production, where the means of production, factories, tools, resources, are privately owned by a small class of capitalists. This ownership structure forces workers to sell their labor to survive, reducing them to commodities themselves. The drive for profit leads to exploitation, as capitalists seek to extract the maximum value from workers while paying them the minimum necessary wages. According to Marx, this alienation would create deep dissatisfaction among workers, eventually leading to class consciousness and revolution. According to his theory, the working class, aka the proletariat, would overthrow the capitalist system, abolish private property, and establish a communist society where workers collectively own the means of production and are no longer alienated from their labor. In summary, while anti-dog crusaders are commendable for their efforts, they are fighting an uphill battle against what is merely a symptom of capitalism. I am not suggesting that they ignore dogs entirely to learn about socialism, but at the least they should, in addition to condemning dogs and dog culture, take on a more solution-oriented mindset which confronts the root cause of dog culture, with said cause being capitalism. The reason modern man, especially in the American empire, has become so infatuated towards dogs is because dogs have been marketed to the masses as a social panacea which will assuage the social alienation brought about by capitalism. Without capitalism, dog culture can't exist. But with that said, this is Morpheus Christus, signing off.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic flaw. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.